The Atlanta Braves last night scored more runs than three MLB teams in September to date, and the 48 runs scored last night between the Braves and the Brewers was the most combined runs in a day by two teams in two different games in Major League Baseball since the 1800s. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Brown, and welcome into this Thursday, September 10th edition of Around the Bases from 110 Sports, live streaming at 110sportsmedia.com/live, twitch.tv/110sports, and available on demand on the website, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Just search for 110 Sports. We have a lot to get to today on the show. It was a crazy night across the majors, highlighted, of course, by those two huge scoring outbursts from the Braves and Brewers, and we will get into that and much more today on the program. Before we get to today's rundown even, I do want to mention here, because it's a very important note, Major League Baseball yesterday celebrating Roberto Clemente Day, with the Pirates honoring his legacy by all wearing the number 21. Right fielder for the Pirates, Gregory Polanco, saying, quote, "He's our Jackie Robinson. He's our idol. He's the great one. He's the player we all know growing up, like, hey, Clemente, he was the man. It was outside the baseball field. That's what makes it even more the greatest person, what he did, and the way he was always helping people. Major League Baseball granted permission for Pirates players to all wear number 21 last week and expanded it to all Puerto Rican-born players. Detroit pitcher Joe Jimenez and Milwaukee pitcher Alex Claudio were among those non-Pirates players who wore the number 21 in their games yesterday. Now, the Pirates and Clemente's family are hoping that the league will one day honor Roberto Clemente by retiring his number across the major leagues. My 2 cents on this: that is absolutely something that should happen. Number 21 should be retired across Major League Baseball. So like I said, a lot to get to here today on the show. This is what we have coming up for you today. We'll start with our top four, but it's actually a top five today because it was going to be a top four, and then the chaos of last night happened. I knew we needed to basically start by talking about that. I didn't feel like throwing anything out, so we're making it a top five today. We're going to start by talking about the Wild Wednesday that was yesterday's action. We're going to talk about the latest on MLB's plan for the postseason. There's been a lot of talk. We've been addressing it here on the show. Bubble system, or our team's going to be playing on their home field. Is there going to be home field advantage for higher seeds? Well, it looks like it may be a combination of both. So we're getting more information on that. We're going to talk about that coming up. Plus, so under the radar starters who are having great seasons, who aren't necessarily getting a lot of attention. Maybe they're not the front runners for the Cy Young Award, but they're right there in the mix, putting up incredible seasons, not huge names, having great seasons. So we're going to talk about a couple of them, plus an update on the Rookie of the Year races in the AL and the NL, and an interesting note about some pitching trends this season, and really what it reveals about trends when it comes to pitchers overall in the majors over the last several years, and what it could mean for the game moving forward. I know it's a little bit broad, a little bit vague, but we'll get into that coming up in our top five today. We'll go through our news and notes as always. Then we'll take a look at the postseason picture across the majors right now. It's something I'm planning to do every Thursday from this point on and through the end of the regular season, which aside from this one's only two more Thursdays, is to take a look at the seeding right now and the situation and playoff odds and see what's decided, what's still in the air. We're going to go through that coming up. Plus, as always on our Thursday shows, a look at some of the big series coming up this weekend, and it's taking on more of a higher importance. We can really narrow in on a couple of key series this weekend for some teams trying to make the playoffs, or trying to fend off teams who are trying to make a run for their playoff spot. That's all coming up today on the show. So we are going to start with our top five, of course. Top four today, a top five because of this: the Brewers defeating the Tigers 19-0 yesterday. Atlanta over Miami 29-9, and that is not a typo. It's not a football score. Those are the scores of two Major League Baseball games yesterday. For just the second time in Major League history and the first time in the modern era, two teams have won by 19-plus runs on the same day. That is what happened last night for the Brewers, for the Braves. And let's start by just talking a little bit about these games individually. We'll start with Milwaukee and Detroit, which got a lot of attention. It was the only afternoon game across the majors yesterday, and there was a lot of attention, paid toward that game and what the Brewers were doing before it was overshadowed by the Braves' performance last night. The Brewers entered yesterday ranking 28th in runs scored in the majors this season, and their performance last night had helped them climb 4 spots in that category. So they went from 28th in runs scored up to 24th in runs scored just from one night. Milwaukee outhit the Tigers 21-2 and defeated Detroit 19-0. The Brewers' 13 extra base hits in the game set a new franchise record. 6 Milwaukee players had multiple RBIs, and Detroit starting pitcher Matthew Boyd gave up 7 earned runs in 3 innings before 4 of the 5 relievers used by the Tigers gave up multiple runs as well. Per MLB.com, Sarah Langs, Milwaukee's win was their second largest shutout victory in franchise history, trailing only a 20-0 win over the Pirates back in 2010. The Brewers now sit at 19-22 and 2 games back of the Cardinals for the second spot in the NL Central, which of course this year means a playoff spot. The Brewers are also 1.5 games back of a wild card spot, and we're going to talk more about their situation, like I mentioned, and playoff odds and the teams that are ahead of them, behind them, all that, coming up here in just a bit. Not a whole bunch else to say about this other than, this Brewers offense had been really poor, had been having a really, really bad year. There just wasn't much in that lineup behind Christian Yelich, who's not having a typical Christian Yelich season, and Keston Hiura, their second baseman. There's not much else in that lineup. They were really struggling this year. They're still trying to make it into the playoffs. They're not that far back, as I just mentioned, and a huge offensive outburst from the Brewers. But undoubtedly, the biggest story of the day, though, Atlanta-Miami. The Marlins actually struck first in this game with a 2-run second inning, and then Atlanta scored 11 runs in the bottom half of the inning, and then multiple runs in each of the next 5 innings, defeating the Marlins 29-9 at home last night. So there were so many historic, incredible statistics coming out of that game last night. Let's just talk about a couple of them, or a handful of them, really. First, it is the first game in MLB history to end by a score of 29-9. Think of how many baseball games have been played over the years. None of them had ever ended with a score of 29-9 until last night. It's also the first time, according to Jeremy Frank, it's the first time we've seen a new final score in baseball since 1999. As in, the last time that a game ended with a score that baseball had never seen before was 1999. It's been 21 years since that's happened. For reference, that was a 24-12 win for the Reds over the Rockies. Atlanta became the first team to score 25 runs through the first 6 innings of a game since the Cubs in 1922. And the Braves' 29 runs, this was, of course, one of the big stats, the most in modern franchise history. The only other games in which the franchise scored that many runs were 30-run and 29-run games back in 1883 when they were the Boston Bean Eaters. The Braves are the first National League team in the modern era to score 29 runs in a game, and those 29 runs tied for the second most in a game all time. On the Miami side, of course, it wasn't pretty for the Marlins pitchers. Jordan Yamamoto came on in relief of starter Pablo Lopez, who gave up 7 earned runs, and Yamamoto surrendered 13 runs, 12 of them earned on 11 hits and 2 walks in 2 2/3 frames. Only one other reliever since 1948, Vin Mazzaro with Kansas City in 2011, has allowed that many earned runs in a game. So now let's touch, before we exit this point, let's touch on a couple more individual performances from the Braves. Right fielder Ronald Acuna Jr. went 3 for 4 with 3 walks, 4 runs scored, 5 RBI. He became the first NL player with at least 3 hits, 3 walks, and 3 RBI in a game since Todd Helton in 2003, the first Braves player to do so since 1994. First baseman Freddie Freeman had 6 RBI in the game. His third inning home run was his 1,500th career hit. Catcher Travis d'Arnaud, 3 RBI, but the big star, undoubtedly left fielder Adam Duvall, who capped off his second three-homer game within an 8-game stretch with a 7th-inning grand slam. Duvall became the first player in Braves history with multiple 3-homer games, not in a season, just ever in Braves history. His line for the day, 3 for 4, 5 runs scored, 2 walks, 9 RBI. First Atlanta player with 9 or more RBI in a game since 1966. Duvall also became the only MLB player since RBI became an official statistic with at least 3 home runs, 9 RBI, and 2 walks in a game. And it's a lot of stats, but one more here I want to throw at you. Duvall, the first player in Major League history with a 2-run homer, a 3-run homer, and a grand slam in a game in that order. First player ever to do that. The Braves have now scored 80 runs in September, the most in Major League Baseball, the second most. The Mets and the Giants with 62 each, so a pretty big gap there. Milwaukee still ranks 13th in baseball in runs scored this month with 42 despite yesterday's performance, which shows how much they've been struggling at the plate. And like I said, we'll look at the bigger picture for both these teams coming up here in just a bit. But that's our first top 5 point for today. We'll move on here to our other items, which we'll talk about this. So we've known for a while now that Major League Baseball has been looking into some sort of a neutral site or bubble setup for the postseason. And now a more concrete plan appears to be taking shape. The LA Times reporting Wednesday that the league is close to finalizing a postseason plan that would have all wildcard series hosted by the higher-seeded team and all other postseason series at different bubbles, one for the AL and one for the NL up until the World Series. So how this would work, let's say the Dodgers are the number 1 seed in the National League, which seems incredibly likely at this point. The Dodgers would then host the 8th seed at Dodger Stadium for the entirety of the best-of-3 first-round wildcard round games. So they host the 8th seed in the NL, best 2 of 3. Winner moves on to the National League bubble, which would be in Texas, where games would be played at Globe Life Field, the Rangers Stadium, and Minute Maid Park, the Astros Stadium. On the AL side, their bubble setup would be in California, in Southern California, the Dodger Stadium and San Diego's Petco Park. And that would go all the way through the League Championship Series. Then the World Series would be played at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas. Now, this would mean, of course, the Dodgers and the Padres would be heading to Texas for the playoffs, and the Astros to California, which may seem a little odd, but the idea is to remove any potential home advantages within the postseason bubble. The goal here, of course, is health and safety, and Major League Baseball doing what it can, taking measures it thinks it can to do everything they can to avoid an outbreak like we've seen earlier this season with the Marlins and Cardinals, which could derail the playoffs if it happened then. In that same spirit, Major League Baseball has reportedly been in talks with the Players Union about other measures, including families of players being required to enter a 7-day quarantine if they want to join those controlled bubble environments. Justin Turner, the Dodgers' third baseman and union rep, pushed back on that plan in talking to the Athletics' Ken Rosenthal. He cited the team's success in navigating the season with 0 positive tests since the start of the summer training camp. Turner telling Rosenthal, quote, "You're asking us to choose between our families and the playoffs? That's a stupid question, especially when we've played however many successful games this season. Obviously, there were 2 blips early on, but it was out of our poor choices by individuals. Other than that, it has been a pretty successful season. Why change all the protocols now?" Now, there's still clearly plenty being ironed out, but a source familiar with the league's thinking telling Ken Rosenthal You just can't be in a position to roll the dice and say, look, the Dodgers have been fine so far. Let's hope it stays that way. If you're running a league, it's not the type of policy you would want. It's basically a policy based on luck. So there's plenty that's still being ironed out here. Plenty to keep track of. Rosenthal, though, indicating in his reporting that talks between the league and union are going pretty well. So we're likely going to be hearing about this more concrete plan on all of this coming up pretty soon, I would imagine. Of course, the playoffs only a few weeks away. Less than 3 weeks from now, the first wild card series games, which of course every team that makes the playoffs will be playing in wild card series games this year because of the structure. So clock is ticking. I have to think we're going to be learning more on what this exactly would look like, getting things sort of more locked in place in the days ahead. Our next item in the top 4, we're going to go through this pretty quickly here, but we've talked so much about, we talked about it on the show the other day, Cy Young races, and, it at the top of the Cy Young races is a lot of pitchers that we would expect to see. Shane Bieber having a sensational season in the American League, and then there's, Trevor Bauer, Jacob deGrom, Clayton Kershaw, and several others at the top of the NL race, Yu Darvish. And none of those are just huge surprises. I mean, some of they're incredible seasons, not necessarily ones you'd predict, but they're not necessarily a huge surprise. But I want to highlight today a couple of pitchers having some great seasons who we haven't talked so much about. They're not having necessarily Cy Young caliber seasons, or let me put this another way. They're not going to win the Cy Young Award, most likely. They are having Cy Young caliber seasons, though. So let's just get right into it. The Marlins starting pitcher, Sixto Sanchez, the flamethrower, rated as the Marlins' best prospect by MLB Pipeline, has been outstanding in his first 4 Major League starts this year. He shut out the Braves for 6 innings on Tuesday to bring his season ERA down to 1.80. He also struck out 25 batters in 25 innings. So far this season, just 2 walks to date. StatCast shows Sanchez with 10 pitches tracked at 100 miles an hour or higher this season. Only Jacob deGrom has more in the majors. Atlanta manager Brian Snitker, after his team faced Sanchez in his most recent start, saying, quote, "I'm telling you what, if he stays healthy, he's going to give people fits for a long time. That's the total package right there." Sixto Sanchez bringing himself into the NL Rookie of the Year conversation. A late start for him, though he didn't get the call-up until after the season was already underway for several weeks. So it means he'll need to really finish strong the rest of the way to really be in that conversation. But he's doing incredible things right now. Sixto Sanchez of the Marlins. Another pitcher I want to highlight here is San Diego starter Dinelson Lamet, who himself is having a great season as well. Now, Chris Paddock was the ace of that staff heading into the season. And as we've discussed in the past, it's not been a great year for Chris Paddock. And then the team went out and acquired Mike Clevenger prior to the trade deadline. But a name you absolutely should know who's making a big difference for San Diego this year is Dinelson Lamet. The right-hander last season posted a 4.07 ERA. His walk rate was a bit high. This year, the 28-year-old is delivering on his long-known potential. He's been sensational against the Rockies Monday night. He matched a season high with 11 strikeouts in 7 2/3 scoreless innings. His season numbers now, he's 2-1 on the year. His ERA is 2.24 in 9 games. He has 68 strikeouts to 15 walks in 52 1/3 innings. Walks are pretty low, striking out more than a batter per inning, significantly more than that. With his Monday start, Lamet became the first Padre ever with multiple 11 strikeout, 0 walk games in a season. That's how incredible he's been this year. He also became just the second pitcher in Major League Baseball this season with multiple 10-plus strikeout, 0 walk performances, joining Shane Bieber, the AL Cy Young frontrunner. Incredible season to date for Dinelson Lamet. One other player I want to highlight is a Milwaukee starting pitcher, which this is an incredible transformation. Corbin Burns, the starter for Milwaukee, was absolutely disastrous last year. He gave up 48 runs in 49 innings. That's an 8.82 ERA. He struck out 70 batters in 49 innings, in those 49 innings, but he allowed 17 home runs. Batters hit 330 against him. This season, he's emerged as a legitimate Cy Young caliber pitcher. And, I maybe want to offer a disclaimer or sort of walk back what I said before when I said none of these pitchers is going to win the Cy Young Award. I still wouldn't predict it for Corbin Burns, but his 1.9 he has a 1.99 ERA and 64 to 19 strikeout to walk ratio in 45 and a third frames. That's his season line after 7 shutout innings with just 1 hit and 11 strikeouts against Detroit on Wednesday. He became the first pitcher in Milwaukee history to post an outing of 10 plus strikeouts, 0 runs, and 1 or 0 base runners. Also the first NL pitcher to do so since Max Scherzer in 2015. He is not allowed an earned run in any of his last 3 starts. Corbin Burns has been outstanding for Milwaukee this season, a 1.99 ERA. That comes after, again, he had an 8.82 ERA in nearly 50 innings last year. What a transformation for Corbin Burns of the Brewers. Next item, we just have a couple more to get to here in our top 5 today. Let's go ahead and check in on the Rookie of the Year races. We talked on Tuesday about the Cy Young races and the crowded field in the National League, not so much in the American League where Shane Bieber is running away with it. Rookie of the Year, though, another interesting set of races in the AL and NL. We'll talk about the MVP races on Tuesday's show. That's a plan for that. I know it's a little bit of a weird order, but I wanted to talk about Rookie of the Year races today because there are so many rookies making a huge impact in the majors this season. Let's start with the American League, where it appears to be a two-way race still between 2 center fielders, the White Sox Luis Robert and the Mariners Kyle Lewis. Robert is hitting .265 through 41 games. He has 11 homers, 27 runs and RBI, and 6 steals. He's playing great defense in center field, and he's certainly getting probably the most attention of any rookie this season. But Kyle Lewis's numbers just are better. The center fielder for the Mariners is hitting .313 with an on-base percentage over .400. He has 9 homers and 3 steals, and he is my pick right now for AL Rookie of the Year. It, like I said, appears to be a two-way race between those players, but I do want to highlight a couple more names. Another one to remember, Baltimore outfielder Ryan Mountcastle. He has no real chance of winning the award because he just got called up August 21st, but he's been simply incredible in his first weeks in the majors. He's 12 for his last 23 at the plate, over .500, and he's hitting .383 with a .441 on-base percentage, 4 homers, 3 doubles in 17 games. That's an OPS above 1,000 for Ryan Mountcastle. He's been outstanding for the Orioles. There are no rookie pitchers on the AL side that I think would capture the award right now, though some could get a few votes. A few of the best AL rookie pitchers have been Minnesota's Randy Dobnak, the Astros' Christian Javier, and the A's' Jesus Luzardo. On the NL side, it's probably a runaway right now for Padres infielder Jake Cronenworth, a 26-year-old hitting .323 with a .930 OPS, 4 homers, 11 doubles, 3 triples, 21 runs, 20 RBI, 3 steals. He's contributing pretty much everywhere. But this is one that I wouldn't be surprised could change in the final couple weeks of the season if things fall a certain way. Cronenworth has cooled down at the plate. He's still having an incredible year. Like, you heard the numbers. There are some others who could get some votes and who are having an incredible season. One of them is Sixto Sanchez, who we talked about just a minute ago. I mean, if he can keep up what he's doing for another couple starts, I think that's a real challenger for the NL Rookie of the Year award. The Phillies' top prospect, third baseman Alex Baum, has already had some exciting moments. He's hitting .291 with 2 homers in 24 games, but he didn't get the call until August 13th. And a couple of Dodgers pitchers, Dustin May at 2.88 ERA in 3 starts. Tony Gonsolin in 5 starts. He's been sensational, a 0.76 ERA. The sample size, though, at this point, just too small. But you see there are some guys there, Sanchez and Tony Gonsolin especially, maybe Dustin May, where if they can really finish the season strong, especially those pitchers, really only a couple more starts for them, 2 or 3 tops, I'd say, probably. If they can finish the season strong with a couple of great starts, they could certainly challenge Cronenworth for the NL Rookie of the Year award. So that's your basic check-in there. Just one more top 5 point I want to get to today. And this is something I found really interesting. This was pointed out by MLB.com's Mike Petriello the other day, and I thought it was really interesting. Most teams at this point are about 40 games into the regular season. And in a 60-game season, that's, more than 2/3 of the way there. But in a regular season, 162 games, about 40 games in would be about a quarter of the way instead of 2/3 of the way. And 2020, in this season already, we've had the 6th most pitchers ever used in a season. Baseball Reference has this data going back into the 1870s, and entering play yesterday, 674 pitchers had appeared in Major League games in 2020. And that's more than appeared in the entire 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014 seasons. So again, more pitchers have appeared in games this season than in all of 2011, all of 2012, all of 2013, 14. A few things to note on this. First of all, yes, I know that one of the big comebacks to, pointing this out is, hey, look, they're expanded rosters this year. And we're also seeing an increase in injuries, likely because of the nature of the season. But first of all, we're also talking about roughly 7 weeks of baseball compared to 6 months in a regular full season. So it's the fact that 7 weeks of baseball can have more pitchers taking the mound than 6 months of baseball from many of the first years of this past decade, is remarkable. And there's a bigger trend at play here too. Because the top 3 seasons in terms of most pitchers used, 2019, 2018, and 2017. There's a very clear trend developing here. More pitchers are being used in recent years than ever before across Major League Baseball. And this trend isn't particularly surprising given what we've seen, because starters simply aren't going as deep in games anymore as they used to. Back when starters, several decades ago, when starters just went out and they were going to pitch the whole game. Or they were going to pitch 7-8 innings, pretty much, unless there was a disaster. That's not happening anymore. And as there are all these concerns these days about ways to speed up the game of baseball and all these different measures that have been taken in recent years to try to speed up the game, this is an area that absolutely should be examined. Because all the pitching changes that are involved in having more pitchers in a season than ever before is undoubtedly slowing the game down. And I don't know what the answer here is. Maybe a more stringent pitch clock, limiting the number of active pitchers, changing the mound, changing the ball, changing the strike zone. There are a lot of possibilities, and I don't have an answer. I don't know what would be something that could really make a difference, but the way the game is being played is changing drastically. It's changing significantly, and this season's only a small part of that. This is an area that has to be examined by Major League Baseball as it looks for ways to speed up the game, to make it more interesting, to attract new fans. Like the way the baseball is being played is changing. Like I said, 2018, 2019, and 2017, the top 3 seasons in terms of most pitchers used ever, and we are already at the 6th most pitchers used in a season in 2020. So it's something that really should be looked at moving forward to see, what sort of actions may need to be taken to counterbalance that. All right, that is our top 4, which was a top 5 today for this September 10th. Thanks for being with us here on Around the Bases. We have much more coming up ahead. We'll go through our news and notes when we come back after our first break. A number of different injury updates and other items to get to here today. And then we will dive into an update on the MLB postseason picture. We'll talk a little bit about what's decided right now, or nothing's really absolutely decided, but what's essentially set in stone here with a couple weeks left in the season, and what's still up for grabs, what playoff spots are up for grabs, what's to be decided. A lot still in the air, a lot of exciting playoff races here down the stretch. We'll talk about that all next here on Around the Bases from 110 Sports. All right, welcome back to Around the Bases from 110 Sports here on this Thursday, September 10th, 2020. I'm Chris Brown. Let's dive into today's news and notes. The Cardinals have placed pitcher Johan Oviedo on the COVID-19 injured list after coming into contact on Tuesday with someone who tested positive for COVID-19, but he has not had contact with the team since then, so the Cardinals will keep playing. No postponements there. The Cardinals president of baseball operations, John Mozeliak, saying that Oviedo has tested negative, is not showing symptoms, and will continue to be tested daily as he stays in quarantine. Again, positive test of COVID-19 from the Cardinals, but pardon me, I'm sorry. Important correction. No positive test. That was a mistake there. A player from the Cardinals who came into contact with someone who had tested positive for COVID-19 is quarantining. A no positive test. The team will keep playing because that person, that player for the team, has not had contact with his teammates. So important clarification there to get that straight. Some injury updates for you here today. The White Sox placed veteran starting pitcher Dallas Keuchel on the injured list with back spasms. It's not expected to be too long of an absence for him. The Diamondbacks placed infielder and outfielder Ketel Marte on the injured list with left wrist inflammation, a left hamstring strain for Nationals infielder Howie Kendrick as he lands on the IL. Dodgers starter Walker Buehler struggled against the Diamondbacks on Tuesday in a blister issue, which sent him to the IL before this season. Could be partly to blame there. manager Dave Roberts saying he expects Buehler to make his next start, but added that nothing is off the table. I mentioned on Tuesday's show that Padres first baseman Eric Hosmer is dealing with a fractured left index finger. I mentioned it could be season ending. The San Diego Union Tribune reporting, though, that the location of the injury makes the Padres believe that Hosmer could be able to return before the end of the regular season. Mitch Moreland, acquired from the Red Sox before the trade deadline, is filling in primarily at first base for the Padres in the meantime. Astros starter Lance McCullers underwent a mild anti-inflammatory injection to alleviate nerve irritation in his neck. That, according to the Houston Chronicle, the right-hander was placed on the IL Tuesday due to neck nerve irritation. No timetable for his return. The Royals placed outfielder Jorge Soler on the IL with a right oblique strain. Andrew Benintendi, outfielder for the Red Sox, moved to the 45-day IL, shut down for the year with a rib cage strain. A disappointing season for him on the field as well. Versatile Texas player Danny Santana underwent major surgery on Wednesday on his right elbow. He's going to be sidelined the next 7 to 8 months. Some positive updates here for you. The Braves second baseman Ozzie Albies was activated, returned to the team's lineup yesterday. He has had a bone contusion in his right wrist and had been out for over a month. The Astros activated infielder Alex Bregman. The Rockies activated Bregman, the infielder, activated. The Rockies activated outfielder David Dahl. Toronto shortstop Bo Bichette having an incredible season before injury, a knee sprain. He could return for the team's weekend series against the Mets. The Giants signed veteran first baseman Justin Smoak to a minor league contract. He could be activated in the next couple days as the Giants remarkably still in the playoff hunt. Smoak was released by the Brewers on Tuesday after hitting 186 on the season in 33 games. Gene Buddick, the former head of 3 universities and the last president of the American League, died on Tuesday at the age of 81. Commissioner Rob Manfred, in a statement, saying that Buddick was a friend to many in baseball and praised his lifelong connection to the game. Former Commissioner Bud Selig said Tuesday that he appreciated his work and support, calling Buddick a wonderful person. He became the American League president in 1994 and held the job to 2000 when baseball owners got rid of the league president structure at the urging of then Commissioner Bud Selig. All right, so that's today's news and notes. We're going to go ahead and move on here to something that I'm planning to have the next couple of Thursdays as the regular season winds down, which is an update on the current playoff outlook and what's basically settled, what's not settled, what are the key races, what teams are out of it, what teams are in the thick of it, what's still in the air, a lot of different things to break down there. So we're going to go through each league here. And I can also tell you every Wednesday for the next couple weeks on the website 110sportsmedia.com I'll be publishing an update on where things stand, similar to what we're going to be talking about today. So here's where things stand right now in the American League. And this might be hard to read. If you're listening to this, you're not going to see the graphic that's up on the screen. It's not a perfect setup, but just for today here, wanted to have something up to reference so you can see if you're watching the standings, the seedings right now for the American League playoff race. And again, a reminder for the playoffs this year, 16 teams make it, 8 from each league. It's the top 2 teams in each division. And then of the remaining teams, it is the 2 with the best record in each league. So this is where things stand right now. And I'm also going to be referencing some playoff odds and some division odds from Fangraphs here because they do a good job of breaking it down to sort of explain, what the likelihoods are at this point. So right now, the Rays and the A's are basically they're the number 1 and number 2 seeds if the playoffs were to end today. So this is the seeding, again, on your screen here. And what we're going to be talking about is the seeding for the playoffs in the American League if the season ended today. And I'm sure in terms of order of these 8 teams, even if it's the same 8 teams that are there right now, the order is going to change a little bit. Because it changed a little bit from when I looked at this before yesterday's action to write yesterday's story. It already got changed a little bit just because of last night. There are a lot of teams that are close. So the seeding is going to change, but this is what it looks like right now. Now, the Rays and the A's, again, the number 1 and number 2 seeds, they are basically a lock to win their division and should be probably, among the, probably the 1 and 2 seeds. But it looks like they're basically a lock, again, to win their divisions. And then there is the White Sox, Indians, and Twins all vying for the the AL Central title, to win the AL Central. Right now, it's the White Sox that have the edge in the standings. The White Sox a game ahead of the Indians and Twins for the AL Central lead. But the reality of the situation is that all three of those teams, the White Sox, the Indians, and the Twins, are all going to make the playoffs. They all have a 99.7% chance or higher of playing in October. All three of these teams are going to make the playoffs. It's just a matter of who's, among those top 3 seeds, who's among those 4 through 6 seeds, and who is probably the 7 seed as one of the wild card teams. Important reminder here, again, except for, who you face in the playoffs being determined by seeding, there's no great advantage to being the number 1 seed. You don't get a bye. You don't get put in a real advantage in terms of you're going to get home field advantage for that first series, it appears, like we talked about before. But there's no bye, there's no real other benefit than that. So, again, Rays and A's basically locked into winning their division. The White Sox, Indians, and Twins are all going to make the playoffs. It's just a matter of the order. There are going to be 3 AL Central teams in the playoffs. And then this is where it starts to get a little bit interesting, because let's talk about the second spots in the AL East and the AL West. In the East, it's looking more and more likely like the Blue Jays are going to get that spot. Blue Jays are 24-19 right now. They've got a 91.5% chance of making the playoffs. They are 2 games ahead of the Yankees for that second spot in the AL East standing. So I say it's looking more and more likely like the Blue Jays are going to get that second spot. It's still far from determined because the Yankees are only 2 games back of the Blue Jays. But that's where things stand right now, right there with that team. And the Blue Jays are, if they do drop off, though, the Yankees surpass them, they'll probably just fall into that wild card spot. The Yankees right now are in that final wild card spot. It's been disastrous for the Yankees. They finally got a win last night against the Blue Jays, but they still lost that series, and before that win, they'd lost 15 of 20. And we've talked about it. I've written about it. The Yankees have been in big trouble. Prior to last night's win, they were 500 on the season at the latest point in the calendar year since 1992. The team just hasn't been able to overcome injuries in the same way that they did last year. There's been so many injuries. There were so many injuries last year. They have not been able to overcome it in the same way. They are 22-21, just a game over 500 right now. Fangraphs still gives them a 91.4% chance of making the postseason. So the AL field looks pretty darn set. We also have the Nationals, we also have the Astros, right now the 6th seed if the season ended today. They have the 2nd spot in the AL West. But there is a team, the Mariners, who are on an incredible run right now. They've won 6 of their last 8, and they are 2.5 games back of the Astros for the AL West 2nd spot. I really don't believe that the Mariners are going to be able to upset the Astros for that 2nd spot. But I want to mention that the Mariners are in the hunt. They're somehow the rebuilding Mariners who traded away so many pieces at the trade deadline. They are close enough to the picture that I included them here in this graphic. They're one of the 3 teams outside of the playoff picture right now that still has somewhat of a chance and above 3% chance of making the playoffs. Mariners, again, for what it's worth, Fangraphs 3.3% chance. It's not likely. As for the other 2 teams that are on the outside looking in and trying to play spoiler on the Yankees, you've got the Orioles and the Tigers. Now, the Tigers are slipping. They've got a 6% chance of making the postseason right now. They're just 2-6 in their last 8 games. I really don't see a scenario in which they're able to pull this together. But, again, stranger things have happened. They're at a 6% chance of making the playoffs. They are just a couple games back. Let's see, they are Tigers just a few games back of the Yankees for that final wild card spot. The Orioles, though, they're the really interesting team because the Orioles have won 4 of their last 5. Of the teams not in the AL playoff field right now, they have the best playoff odds at 9.5%. Still very slim. We're talking about a less than a 1 in 10 chance of playing in October. But the Orioles have won 4 of their last 5 games. They are 20-22 on the year. They're they're only a couple games back of the Yankees for that final wild card spot. And the Yankees' struggles have made it so that the Orioles, Tigers, and Mariners, but mostly just the Orioles and Tigers, still have a fighting chance here and makes the AL field still interesting here for the next couple days or weeks until there could potentially be some separation, if not longer. So it was looking more and more like when we talked about this before, like there may not be much to talk about in the American League because, again, Rays, A's, White Sox, Indians, Twins are all making the postseason. Blue Jays and Astros very likely as well. And the Yankees still likely. The scenario that's up there in terms of the 8 teams that are up there on the screen right now is very likely to be how it plays out in some seeding order. But the fact that the Yankees have struggled have opened the door just slightly for the Orioles, Tigers, and Mariners, with the Astro struggles in there. Open the door just enough for those teams to make it potentially interesting for the next couple of days, if not weeks, heading into the end of the regular season. So that's your AL field. The NL field is even more complicated because there's more that could happen in terms of those wild card spots still. So here's a look at the NL field, if the playoff field in the seeding, if the season ended today. And I'll try to make this as simple as I can. I know that it's kind of talking through it. It's a little bit complicated because of the playoff structure this year in particular. That there's with 8 teams making the playoffs with 2 teams in each division and then the wild card teams. It's a bit messy. But here's basically what you need to know about the NL field right now. Dodgers and Padres are making the postseason. The Dodgers are almost certain to be the number 1 seed. The Padres are headed to the postseason for the first time since 2006. They have both been incredible. Those are the 2 highest win totals and the 2 best winning percentages in the National League, the Dodgers and Padres. Dodgers almost certain to be the 1 seed. The Padres almost certain to be one of the 4 seed, most likely. Well, actually, it's almost certain. So Dodgers and Padres will make the postseason. Braves and Cubs are very likely to win their divisions and claim the 2nd and 3rd seeds. It's about a 2/3 chance for each team. Either way, they're going to make the postseason. There's really no doubt about that. 2/3 chance the Braves and Cubs are your, in some order, 2nd and 3rd seeds in the playoffs. Padres are the 4. It seems almost certain that's going to be the case. Then it starts to get a little bit interesting because your NL East and your NL Central, those number 2 teams are not really locked. It appears like it'll be the Cardinals in the Central winning the 2nd spot in the division, and the Phillies in the East. The Phillies have a 52% chance of winning the 2nd spot in the NL East, but a 25% chance of upsetting the Braves for the 1st spot and a 12% chance of falling back into the wild card. Overall, though, the Phillies are going to make the playoffs about a 90% chance. The Cardinals are at about 80%. So again, not certain there, but it looks like Dodgers, Braves, Cubs, Padres are set. Phillies and Cardinals very likely. pretty darn likely. And then it gets really interesting because we have the Giants and the Marlins, if the season ended today, making the postseason. These are two teams that are in the midst of rebuild, that were in the midst of rebuilds, were not expected to be very competitive. Here they are in the wild card spots if the season ended today. The Giants are 23 and 21 right now. They're 2 games over 500. And their playoff odds are up to 73%. There's a small chance that there's a very, very small chance of them leaping the Padres for the second spot. So it's looking more and more like the Giants have one of those wild card spots. Not a certainty, though. And then you have the Marlins, who are right now in the second wild card spot. They, of course, got destroyed last night, as we talked about. And despite the fact that they're in a playoff spot right now, if the season ended today with a 19-19 record, Fangraphs only gives the team a 35% chance of making the postseason. And that's where you see the door is wide open for some of these other teams like the Rockies, Brewers, Mets, and Reds. For what it's worth, the Rockies are at an 18% chance of making the postseason. The Brewers are at 45%. The Mets are at 34%. And the Reds, despite being, the fourth team out of the NL field right now, still have a 1/4 chance of playing in October, according to Fangraphs. So there's still a lot to be decided in the National League. There are a lot of things locked in place. There is some teams in the Phillies and the Cardinals in that middle ground where they're likely to make the postseason, likely to get those second spot in the division. It's not set, and then there's really some open spots for that wild card. Giants looking more likely. Marlins, though, despite being in there, are not the favorite to win that second wild card spot. Rockies, Brewers, Mets, and Reds very much still in the mix in the NL. So these are all going to be things that we follow the rest of the way and keep track of. I know it's a little bit confusing right now. It will get more clear in the next couple of weeks, I assume. So we'll touch base again with something similar next Thursday, and hopefully I can tell you, look, hopefully I can just get right to the 1 or 2 races that are really tight and make this a little bit simpler. But that's a look right now at our postseason picture update. We're going to go ahead and take our final break of the show. When we come back, a quick look at what's on deck, some of the interesting series, a key series coming up for playoff contenders this weekend. That is coming up next here on Around the Bases from 110 Sports. All right, welcome back to Around the Bases from 110 Sports here, streaming on the 110 Sports Network, 110sportsmedia.com. twitch.tv/live, twitch.tv/110sports. I'm Chris Brown here. Just time for a couple minutes on our regular final segment of our Thursday shows, What's on Deck. It's starting to get a little bit more focused now because there are a lot of games and a lot of series this weekend that just don't matter much when it comes to the playoff picture. Here are some of the series and games that you should know about that are going to be coming up this weekend. Couple series of note wrapping up today. The Astros and the A's are going to be finishing a 5-game series this afternoon in Oakland. So far, the A's have taken 3 of the first 4 games in that 5-game series against the Astros. Also wrapping up today, Cincinnati and Chicago finish a 3-game set tonight in Chicago, or the Cubs. So far, the team has split their first 2 games, Cubs and Reds, tonight at Wrigley. Winner wins that series. And, of course, the Reds trying to make a run. They're going to have to get things going right away. The Cubs, somewhat comfortable lead in the NL Central, but not set in stone right now. Now, a couple of key series coming up this weekend. The Phillies and Marlins start a series of 7 games against each other, in a 5-day stretch this evening in Miami. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch. The Phillies, again, the likely second spot in the NL East, but that's not set in stone. The Marlins, right now, they're in a wild card spot if the season ended today, but like we talked about, about a third chance of making the playoffs right now. So they certainly need to rack up some wins if they're going to surprise and make the postseason. Other series of note this weekend, the Yankees and Orioles start a 4-game weekend series in New York today. Yankees trying to get things turned around. Like we mentioned, had lost 15 of their last 20 before a win last night. So they're looking to get things turned around against the Orioles, who are still clinging to some hope for the postseason, trying to play spoiler. The Giants are at the Padres for a 4-game series this weekend starting tonight. Again, the Padres are a great team. They're pretty much locked as that second spot in the NL West. The Giants, though, playoff odds are getting better and better. It looks like they could be a wild card team, but they're going to need to keep performing down the stretch. And then we have Cincinnati at St. Louis with a 3-game series over the weekend. Again, the Reds, team that I was really high on coming into the season, they've underperformed a lot. They have a chance of making the playoffs, but they got to get things going like right now. We'll see how that goes against the Cardinals, who are the likely second seed, or likely second, I keep saying second seed. They're the likely second spot in the NL Central standings, but that's not set in stone. They need to keep performing. They, of course, have a jam-packed schedule down the stretch, so we'll see how that plays out. So those are some series of note coming into the weekend. Again, wrapping up today, Houston and Oakland, Cincinnati and the Cubs, and then several key series this weekend, 4 key series, Phillies and Marlins in Miami, Yankees and Orioles in New York, Giants at Padres, and Reds at Cardinals. And that's your look at what's on deck here today on this Thursday, September 10th, and that is our show for this Thursday, September 10th. Thanks so much for watching Around the Bases. I'm Chris Brown. A couple reminders as we head out today. Make sure to stay tuned to the 110 Sports Network wherever you're watching this for the J. Mull Show with Josh Mullenix, back with you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. And then again on Monday at the same time. Touchline Talk with Josh Doring on Tuesday. And Around the Bases on Tuesday as well. Back with you at 1 p.m. Eastern. We get a lot of content, written content up on the website right now, 110sportsmedia.com, so check out the latest there. You can also click on the video on podcast tabs to see all our latest shows and hear our latest podcasts available on demand. Also on the website, right side of the homepage, you'll see all the information you need to subscribe to the 110 Sports newsletter, which hits your inbox every Friday morning with the latest written content, podcasts, shows, everything from that week. The links are right there. That'll hit your inbox every Friday morning. You can subscribe at 110sportsmedia.com. Right side of the homepage is the information you need. So again, thanks for watching. It's going to be an interesting weekend of baseball. We'll come back on Tuesday to break down the latest developments. We'll, of course, talk about the playoff situation. Can the Yankees get things turned around? Some of the big questions heading into the weekend. We'll have some answers. Hopefully, it looks like by the time Tuesday comes around. So we'll have the latest then. But for now, Thanks for watching Around the Bases from 110 Sports. I'm Chris Brown. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you on Tuesday.